Under the shadow of the old concrete bridge, where the rain whispered secrets to the cracked pavement, there lay a dog named Jax. He wasn't always this way, you see, curled up like a forgotten dream, his golden-brown fur matted with the chill of autumn drizzle, his ears perked just enough to catch the distant hum of city life that never quite reached him. Jax was a German shepherd, built strong like the soldiers his breed had served alongside for generations, with eyes that held the weight of too many miles walked alone. Back when the world felt a little less gray, Jax had a home. It was a small ranch house on the edge of a Texas town, where the sun baked the earth golden, and the wind carried the scent of barbecue from backyard grills. His owner was a man named Tom, a retired army sergeant with calloused hands and a laugh that rumbled like thunder over the plains. Tom had found Jax as a pup, all gangly legs and boundless energy, abandoned by the side of a dusty road during a deployment rotation. "You're my lucky charm, boy," Tom would say, scratching behind Jax's ears as they sat on the porch swing, watching fireflies dance in the twilight. Those were the days when life moved slow and steady, like the lazy roll of the Rio Grande. Jax would chase sticks into the tall grass, his barks echoing off the barn, and at night, he'd curl at the foot of Tom's bed, listening to the soft snores that meant his world was safe. But wars don't end just because the boots come home. Tom carried ghosts in his duffel bag, memories of sandstorms in the desert, the crack of rifles in the dead of night, and buddies who never made it back to those Texas sunsets. Jax sensed it first, the way Tom's steps grew heavier, his eyes staring off into nothing while the TV flickered with old westerns. The nightmares came like uninvited storms, jolting Tom awake with sweat-soaked sheets, and Jax would press his muzzle against his hand, a silent promise that he was there. "Good boy," Tom would mutter, his voice thick with unshed tears, pulling Jax close until the shaking stopped. They went on walks together down the winding dirt roads, past fields of cotton swaying like white-capped waves, and Jax would trot ahead, sniffing out rabbits and the faint hope that tomorrow might be kinder. Tom talked to him about everything: the heat of Baghdad streets, the way a single letter from home could make a foxhole feel like paradise, the ache of missing his wife's smile and his kids' first steps. Jax didn't understand the words, not really, but he felt the rhythm of them, the rise and fall like a heartbeat out of sync. And in those moments, under the vast Texas sky dotted with stars like scattered dog tags, Jax became more than a pet. He was a confidant, a shadow that never judged, a loyal heart beating in time with a wounded one. Then came the day the bank called. The ranch wasn't just a house, it was Tom's anchor, pieced together from savings scraped during deployments and a VA loan that promised stability but delivered fine print. The economy turned sour, like milk left too long in the sun, and the cotton prices tanked while medical bills from Tom's lingering back pain piled up like unpaid debts. "We gotta tighten the belt, Jax," Tom said one evening, his voice cracking as he packed boxes in the dim kitchen light. Jax watched from the corner, tail thumping uncertainly against the linoleum, sensing the shift in the air like a storm brewing on the horizon. They loaded what they could into Tom's beat-up Ford pickup, the old saddle from his cavalry days, a few framed photos of desert sunrises, Jax's worn leash coiled like a question mark. The drive away from the ranch felt endless, the rearview mirror shrinking the life they'd built into a speck of dust. Tom pulled over at a gas station on the interstate, his hands gripping the wheel white-knuckled. "I can't take you with me, boy," he whispered, tears carving tracks down his weathered cheeks. "The apartment's no pets and I can't even feed myself right now." Jax whined, pawing at the door, but Tom just shook his head, unclipping the leash with trembling fingers. "You deserve better than this mess. Go find your way like I taught you." And with that, he drove off, taillights fading into the twilight, leaving Jax with the echo of an engine and the vast, uncaring stretch of highway. The first nights were the hardest, a blur of scavenging and survival that clawed at Jax's spirit like thorns in the brush. He wandered the outskirts of towns, dodging semis that roared past like indifferent giants, his belly growling louder than the coyotes that howled at the moon. Kind strangers tossed him scraps, a half-eaten burger from a drive-through window, a crust of bread from a picnicker's basket, but their eyes always held pity, the kind that stung worse than hunger. Jax learned the rhythms of the road. The best spots to beg near truck stops, where diesel fumes mixed with the promise of greasy fries, the shadows under overpasses where rain couldn't quite reach. He crossed state lines without a map, his paws blistering on asphalt baked hot by day and chilled by night, always chasing that phantom scent of home, of Tom's tobacco chew, and the faint lavender of his wife's laundry soap. Memories flickered like fireflies in his mind. The way Tom would toss a tennis ball until his arm gave out, laughing until it hurt, or the quiet afternoons when they'd sit by the creek, Jax's head on Tom's knee as fish jumped silver in the current. Those thoughts kept him moving, a thread of warmth in the cold unraveling of his world. Months blurred into a watercolor of gray, and Jax found himself in the sprawl of a forgotten industrial city, where factories stood like rusted skeletons, and the river ran sluggish with the sins of the past. The bridge became his reluctant sanctuary, its concrete pillars etched with graffiti tags like war stories scrawled in haste. Here, under the arch that hummed with the vibration of passing trains, Jax could almost pretend the world above didn't exist. The rain fell soft that October afternoon, turning the ground to a mosaic of puddles that mirrored the overcast sky. He lay there now, chin resting on crossed paws, his breath fogging in the damp air. The debris around him, shards of broken bottles glinting like false stars, crumpled newspapers yellowed with yesterday's headlines, felt like companions in exile, silent witnesses to his quiet unraveling. His eyes, those deep amber pools that once sparkled with mischief, now gazed at nothing, heavy with the ache of what was lost. Not just the ranch, or Tom's rough hand ruffling his fur, but the simple certainty of belonging. Jax missed the pack, the way loyalty wove through his veins like blood, unbreakable until the world decided otherwise. In the distance, a siren wailed, cutting through the patter of rain like a knife through fog. Jax lifted his head slightly, ears twitching, but it wasn't for him. Nothing ever was anymore. He remembered the soldiers Tom spoke of, the ones who'd patrolled villages with dogs like him, sniffing out danger, guarding flanks in the dead of night. "You and me, Jax, were cut from the same cloth," Tom had said once, after a particularly bad dream. "Built to endure, even when it feels like the ground's giving way." And endure Jax did, through the sting of loneliness that settled in his bones like winter frost. He'd seen other strays come and go under this bridge, a scruffy terrier with a limp, a sleek cat that vanished one dawn, each carrying their own scars, their own stories whispered to the wind. Sometimes, Jax would dream of them all running together across endless fields, tails high, free from the chains of memory. But waking brought only the drip-drip of water from the bridge above, pooling around his paws like tears he couldn't shed. As the light faded to a bruised purple, a figure approached from the gloom, a woman in a faded army jacket, her boots splashing through the shallows. Her name was Lena, a veteran herself, drawn to the underbelly of the city by a volunteer shift at the local shelter. She'd lost her own dog years ago, to the same cruel math of deployments and empty promises, and something about the shape under the bridge tugged at her like an old wound. Jax watched her warily, his body tense, ready to bolt into the shadows. But Lena moved slow, like she knew the language of the broken, crouching low, her voice soft as the rain. "Hey there, fella. You look like you've seen some miles." She extended a hand, palm up, offering a treat from her pocket, the scent of peanut butter cutting through the metallic tang of wet concrete. Jax hesitated, the pull of trust warring with the bite of betrayal. Memories flooded back, Tom's hand, steady and sure, the warmth of a firelit hearth, the joy of a belly rub after a long day. Slowly, inch by inch, he uncurled, nose twitching toward her offering. Lena didn't rush him. She sat there in the gathering dusk, talking in that easy drawl of the South, sharing bits of her own road, nights in barracks halfway around the world, the hollow echo of homecoming when the fanfare faded. "I get it, boy. Sometimes the bravest thing is just lying still, waiting for the storm to pass." Jax inched closer, the treat forgotten as he leaned into her touch, her fingers gentle on his sodden fur. It wasn't Tom, not quite, but it was a spark. A reminder that loyalty wasn't a one-way street, that hearts like his were built to find their way back to the light. The rain eased to a mist, and as Lena slipped a collar around his neck, soft words promising baths and bones and maybe even a yard with grass, Jax felt something shift inside. Not the end of sorrow, but the quiet dawn after a long night. Under that bridge, amid the rubble and reflections, he rose on shaky legs, following her into the unknown, tail giving a tentative wag. The city lights flickered on overhead, stars in their concrete sky, and for the first time in months, Jax believed in tomorrows again. The drive to the shelter was quiet, the wipers swishing a lullaby against the windshield. Lena glanced at him in the rear view, his head resting on the seat, eyes half closed in wary peace. "What'll we call you, huh? Something strong like the line you come from." Jax didn't answer, of course, but in his dreams that night, curled on a fresh blanket in a kennel that smelled of pine and possibility, he heard Tom's voice one last time. "You're my lucky charm, boy." And maybe, just maybe, luck was a circle, turning back on itself when you least expected. Days turned to weeks, and Jax, now officially Jax, with a shiny tag and a vet checkup under his belt, began to heal. The shelter folk noticed his steady gaze, the way he'd sit patient with the kids who visited, letting tiny hands bury in his fur without a flinch. Lena came every afternoon, walking him along the river path where willows dipped like old friends waving hello. "You're a natural, you know that?" she'd say, tossing a frisbee that sailed bright against the blue. Jax would leap, all grace and forgotten fire, landing with a grin that split his muzzle wide. Word spread, as it does in small worlds stitched by shared scars. A family heard about him, a young couple, both vets from the same unit, with a toddler who giggled at the sight of paws bigger than her storybooks. They came one Saturday, the dad kneeling to Jax's level, his own eyes rimmed with the quiet battles of home. "He looks like he gets it," the man said, voice rough. Jax leaned in, sniffing the familiar scent of dog tags tucked under a shirt, and something clicked, like puzzle pieces slotting home after years adrift. The adoption papers signed in a blur of hope, and just like that, Jax had a new pack. Their home was a cozy bungalow in the suburbs, with a fenced yard where squirrels chattered taunts from the oaks, and a porch swing that creaked just right. The toddler called him Wax, her chubby fingers twisting the J, and Jax took to it gentle as a breeze, guarding her naps with a vigilance born of old instincts. Evenings brought barbecues with neighbors, laughter bubbling like the beer in red Solo cups, and Jax would sprawl at their feet, belly full, heart mending stitch by stitch. But healing isn't linear. It's a road with detours and potholes that jar the soul. Some nights, thunder rolled in like artillery fire, and Jax would pace the kitchen, whining low until the dad, now Mike, sat with him, hand steady on his flank. "It's okay, buddy. We've both been through the boom." Mike's wife, Sarah, understood too. She'd brew chamomile tea and read aloud from dog-eared paperbacks, her voice weaving tales of adventure that chased shadows away. Jax learned their rhythms, the patter of toddler feet at dawn, the sizzle of pancakes on Sunday mornings, the way Mike's guitar strummed soft melodies under the stars. And in those moments, Jax felt the circle complete. From abandoned pup to loyal shadow, from bridge dweller to family anchor. He chased balls across dew-kissed lawns, herded the toddler from flower beds with a nudge of his nose, and at night, he'd curl between Mike and Sarah, a bridge of his own spanning their quiet aches. Years slipped by like pages in a well-loved book, and Jax grew silver around the muzzle, his steps a touch slower but his spirit unbowed. The toddler, now Ellie, with braids and a backpack, declared him her forever knight, drawing pictures of him slaying dragons under rainy bridges. Mike and Sarah found their footing too, starting a support group for vets and their four-legged companions, a circle of stories shared over coffee and fetch games in the park. Jax became the mascot, his photo on flyers with that knowing gaze. Adopt, don't shop, find your lucky charm. And on rainy October days, when the world turned misty and gray, Jax would lie on the porch, chin on paws, watching puddles form like old friends. He'd think of Tom, wherever the road had taken him, and send a silent woof into the wind. "I made it, old man. We're both still standing." The bridge was a memory now, etched in scars that told of survival, but the heart of it, the enduring pull of loyalty, beat strong as ever. In the end, Jax's story wasn't one of grand heroics or Hollywood endings. It was the quiet epic of every stray soul who's ever looked up at an indifferent sky and chosen to keep going. It was the whisper that says, no matter how far you fall, there's always a hand extended, a pack waiting, a home worth the wander. And under that vast American expanse, from Texas plains to city underpasses, Jax taught us all. Resilience isn't in the roar, but in the rise, the slow, steadfast climb back to the light. So here's to you, Jax, you beautiful, battered warrior. May your reigns always lead to rainbows and your bridges to the other side.